Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the Black Box Podcast. We're going to be doing a much lighter mystery tonight, and some of the last stuff that I did on this channel were very political centered and also dealing some with serial killers, but this is much lighter. We're going to be talking about the theory that Avril Lavigne died in 2003 and was replaced by a lookalike named Melissa Vandella. This is apparently something that's been going on for 4 years. This theory online, that is. Yet I did not hear about it until 2017. First of all, why don't we look at some of the facts and some of the arguments put forward by this theory before we get into any sort of commentary? Now, let's have a look here. This is a hoax that goes back to 2003, and this is stating that Avril Lavigne passed away from suicide in 2003 following the death of her grandfather. She had been having a hard time with the trappings of fame, and not to mention the passing of her grandfather, all that combined really just pushed her over the edge. They write, in 2002 it's alleged that Lavigne was having a hard time, but after her debut album, Let Go, dropped, her management just thought that she was so popular and that they stood a chance to make so much money by continuing on her act, they hired her lookalike actress named Melissa Vandella to play the part of Avril Lavigne, and she is playing the part of Avril ever since. Lavigne died in 2003 by hanging herself in British Columbia, Canada. Now, that is an oddly specific thing to say, that she died from hanging herself in British Columbia, again, without providing any source, not providing any sort of link that we can look at anything that we can examine for ourselves. So that's, I would love to read more on that, to find out where they got that detailed information from, that not only did she die, but she died from hanging, and she died in British Columbia. Like, I would like to find out where they got that from, but of course, there is nothing posted. And who is Melissa Vandella? She was hired by Avril Lavigne as a decoy to distract the paparazzi and also maybe even do some photo shoots. Basically, just to be a lookalike. She was hired by Avril Lavigne. And Avril's second album had already been recorded by then, so Melissa Vandella did not have to sing yet. And over this time, they thought that they trained Melissa to replicate the singing voice of Avril Lavigne, and they taught her basically voice lessons so that she could continue on singing and play the role of Avril Lavigne over the next several years. Now, this theory comes from a Twitter user in Brazil who ran a website many years ago, actually only 4 years ago, and the Twitter user is named Gavinci, who issued a rant on May 12th that comprised of 50 tweets, and the rant says that Avril Lavigne was not allowed to die by her management company because they thought her career was so hot in 2003, so they just decided to keep it on going. Now, some of the biggest things that I think work against this theory are: no one can stay consistent with the dates and the times. If you watch 10 YouTube videos on this, you're going to see that some people say that Avril died in 2002, some that say 2003, and some that say 2004. No one is really staying consistent with any sort of chronology. Another point that people are raising is that the page that said Avril is dead was created to show how conspiracies can look like they are true. This is, again, that Brazilian website run by that person, Gavinci, that says it has a disclaimer that says this website is set up to show how conspiracies can look like they are true. And, I'm sure if you were to ask the creator of that website, they would simply say that they're just saying that so they don't get sued. That's like a disclaimer to get rid of liability. Just in case somebody gets offended by that content, they're just like, using a get out of jail free card. I'm sure they would say that. And furthermore, we're going to get into something a little more detailed about that in the later parts of this podcast. So stick around because the story is not over yet. Now, Avril Lavigne was subject to a different death hoax in January of 2012, and that was from the prank website Global Associated News, which said that she died while snowboarding. Not very relevant. And some of the big things that we now need to look at. I mentioned before that they couldn't keep all the dates straight, and another thing that someone has pointed out is if they trained Melissa Vandella to sing like Avril Lavigne, why are so many people using that as evidence? Why are so many people saying that, well, she sounds different, she completely changed her voice, she completely changed her style? If they trained her to sing like Avril and to talk like Avril, how is that happening? Wouldn't they just be saying that, yeah, she sounds a little different, but that's Avril? I mean, the thing that they are saying is that the lookalike, whoever she is, has a much higher, much sharper voice than Avril. If you look at the old video clips of Avril, you will find a very deep, very low female voice. When you look at the more recent clips of Avril talking, she has a very sharp, very high-pitched voice. All I can say is Avril has about 2 or 3 documentaries on YouTube. I just completed one, shortly before recording this podcast, and also there are lots of extended interviews with Avril all over the internet. You can hear her voice for herself, and I will tell you, her voice changes all the time, and it was really something you can hear in a documentary where they are filming her during many different periods throughout the day. Her voice is changing all the time. Like, she has the low voice, she has the medium voice, and she has the high-pitched voice. When she's very excited and when she starts talking very fast, she gets very high-pitched. Yes, it's possible. And another thing is, I really think she has a very medium register. I think the clips that they use in the conspiracy sites have been very, very cherry picked. They're choosing very select images that feature her with the low voice, and very select ones that feature her with the high pitched voice, and they are just showing you like a 10-minute clip here, maybe a 30-second clip here. Did I say 10 minutes? I meant 10 seconds. Yeah, they show 10 seconds here, 30 seconds there, but they don't show her talking for 45 minutes. And you will hear her voice actually does change all the time, and they don't really show you her natural speaking voice either, which isn't super low, which isn't super high, which appears to be very medium. So I don't think there's any evidence there. However, in some of the later clips, I mentioned we're going to get back to the look-alike and the whole Avril is dead thing. Another theory that has been put out is that no, Avril is not dead, but she has been using at least one look-alike, maybe more, to just sort of take on the public life, sort of to continue all of the sort of public behavior. Even the music videos they think might be filmed by a look-alike and not really her. I will say that this is much more plausible. This is something that is much more realistic. It's much simpler. And I remember just watching some of the clips, just YouTube, Avril Lavigne, just talking in various clips. And one of them I just hit me like a brick. And I'm like, that's not her. It's like the person has, a very different face. The person had, even like a voice that I thought was too high. And again, people talk about posture, body language, mannerisms. All of those can change, but it really felt like, you're talking to a different person. You're listening to a different person. So it's possible, and there would be some very, very gutsy things to do That'd be a very gutsy thing to do for someone in the celebrity spotlight to having a body double, not really very gutsy, but to put that person in front of a microphone or to have that person perform in your music videos, it's like that's a very, very risky thing to do. I mean, like, perhaps, someone who's interviewed her more than once would really kind of catch on, or, I mean, maybe people have caught on, though, and that's just the short of it. I do think there's a lot of possibility that no, she didn't die in 2003 and then was replaced by a lookalike, but it's very possible that she's just using a lookalike at some point for a lot of her public events, and maybe she's still involved with the singer-songwriter part and records her own music and writes her own music, but she has somebody else do more of the public things. Also, when they talk about comparing photos, if you look at the photos of Avril in the past and look at the photos of Avril in like 2014, 15, 16, and they notice how that they all look drastically different. Again, just start watching some things off of the conspiracy sites, and you will see that she doesn't always look the same. For example, when you watch her in the documentaries, it's like they showed, her just talking normally for a rehearsal, and then they show some photos from her wedding, the first wedding, and it's like, you know, she looks like a drastically different person, but I doubt the look-alike was getting married to Derek from Sum 41, It's like she looks different and her makeup is done drastically different, and she's probably using an enormous amount of makeup for some of these um, photo events. I just remember always hearing, when female celebrities get ready for a performance, they spend 40 minutes to 1 hour doing their makeup alone. So it's very possible that it's just the makeup job is just blown out of proportion. Definitely, though, you can't hide some things like major bone structure, however, and a lot of people are noticing the differences in her nose and jawline, and yeah, that's probably the result of cosmetic surgery. I don't see why we wouldn't say that. And another thing, just to cap off the fact that Avril is not dead, when you think about the real sort of extreme nature of someone faking their own death, or sorry, a record label faking their own death. Yeah, that's right. The record label is trying to cover up the fact that she is dead. When you think about that, what about extended family members? Like, one girl named Kiki Levine was posting in the comments section again saying, hey, she's my third cousin. I know her personally. I saw her 3 years ago, and, even if that person made up that story, what about extended family? Like, what about, third cousins and fourth cousins who knew this person in real life and they were just like, they would be able to spot a look-alike, or also just to be able to be in on the fact that this person had passed away. It's just like the amount of people that would have actually known the celebrity, the actual people that would be connected, who had the possibility of learning that she died. You can't contain that. That's too much. Your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, third cousins, fourth cousins, people who are not going to be told to keep silent, people they aren't even going to be thinking about. They're somehow going to get wind of this because they're in the family. And they would not really be standing for that. So it's very unlikely that Avril is dead, but it is possible, however, that she is using a body double in some of her public appearances. I could see that's possible. So that's sort of the short end of it, and it really is for the best that she is not passed away and we don't have a giant tragedy on our hands. However, the internet will be the internet, and just keep exploring theories, keep an open mind, and do some investigation. I would love to hear what everybody thinks. I would love to hear commentary from anybody. If you have anything to say, just drop a comment. Talk to you soon.